So if you have your Bible, open it up to Zechariah chapter 3. And I want to just start by saying, number one, we have been in the habit lately of, of kind of reviewing. And I just say, last time we talked about the book of Zechariah, we were talking about garments of righteousness because it was talking about Joshua the high priest and how the angel of Yah was saying to him, certain things. And then they took these filthy garments off of him and put new clothing on him. So we talked about the garments of righteousness being indicative of the righteousness of the saints. We tied that in with the book of Revelation. At least 3 times in the book of Revelation talks about the saints wearing white garments, those whose righteous deeds go before them, and also who are the overcomers. We'd also discussed that those people were likely rewarded with these white garments because they had overcome the flesh. It's not like overcoming the world or something, although that's certainly part of it. More likely overcoming the flesh was probably a big one. So we also talked about how our righteousness is necessary, but not salvific. Does that make sense? You ain't going to save yourself by trying to observe the Torah, being a good person, although it's highly recommended. That is not going to ingratiate you and make you, that is going to ingratiate you with God, but it's not going to save your soul. You'd have to do it perfectly in order to have that happen, and that's just not possible, at least not for me. I might be wrong about that. But this week we're going to be talking about Zechariah 3, 6 through approximately 10, where we'll be talking about this angel admonishing Joshua, number one. Number two, there's a new conditional, almost call it a new covenant, a renewed covenant that is established between Yah and Joshua the high priest. It's one of those if-then covenantal agreements, which is very interesting. And then we'll also talk a little bit about the rewards of the faithful high priest, and then a special guest is going to talk to us a little bit about stones with eyes, which is, I have no idea what that's going to be all about. We will see. But number one, let me read this for you. Okay, so I'm going to just share my screen for a second. I don't know why I canceled it. I apologize. Okay, so here we are. And it says, you guys seeing that? It's all good? Okay, excellent. So here we are in Zechariah 3:6, starting, and I'll read it for you. It says, "And the angel of Yah admonished Joshua, saying, Thus says Yah of hosts, if you will walk in my ways, and if you will perform my service, then you will also govern my house, and also have charge of my courts, and I will grant you free access among these who are standing here. Now listen, Joshua the high priest, you and your friends who are sitting in front of you. Indeed, they are men who are a symbol. For behold, I am going to bring in my servant the branch. For behold, the stone that I have set before Joshua, on one stone are 7 eyes. Behold, I will engrave an inscription on it, declares Yah of hosts, and I will remove the iniquity of that land in one day. In that day, declares Yah of hosts, every one of you will invite his neighbor to sit under his vine and under his fig." There's probably a whole lot of things popping off in your mind right now. There's passages and ideas and stories from Yeshua and other places that are really, you should be connecting some dots here. So let's get right to it. I want to point out to you just something that I might have glanced right over. I'm going to back up my slide one time because I think right at verse 6 where it says, "The angel of Yah admonished Joshua, saying," what's important seems to be what he's about to say. But something caught my attention, and it was the word admonished. Now I don't know why that happened, but I will share that with you. because here's what the base of that word is. It's the Hebrew word ud. Now it's a long thing here. It's vaya'ad, but the root word is ud. That's 5749 in the Hebrew, and it literally means to return, go around, or go about, repeat, or do again. Does that sound like an admonishment? Didn't quite jive with me either. And that's what I often try to do. I can skip over and, him, her, she, he, it, those simple words, but whenever a bigger word catches my attention, I always look it up. And I often find that it does not comport with what the English says. That's a great way to study your Bible, by the way, is to look up the important words in the sentence, subjects and verbs a lot of times. So when I did that, I stumbled across this, which is kind of to go around, to do again. Now, in a sense, it does go along with admonish. Can anybody give me an idea why you think that might be? How would admonish kind of comport with to repeat or go over again or go around again? Who is it? It's Ella Tim. Ella, you got it, girl. Tell us what's up.
It makes me think of like a parent or a teacher, like teaching someone, like, oh, you did it not quite right, do it again until you get it
Yes,
right.
she's absolutely right. Give it up for Ella Tim, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Good insight. Good insight. That's absolutely true. It makes me think of a parent or a teacher who says to someone that they're instructing, here's what I have to tell you, and then they do it again and again and again and again. That's called learning by rote. Now that has really fallen out of favor. Grab the microphone, Jeremy. Thank you. That has really fallen. That's for Evan. That has really fallen out of favor. That used to be for a long time that's how most people got their education, is by rote learning. It's like memorize your multiplication tables and stuff like that. Memorize the things that you needed to know. We don't do that so much in our education system anymore. And I noticed for myself, and that if you've tried to study the Bible and you've read the same book over and over and over and over and over, it sticks in your mind, and now you can almost like just repeat it word for word, verbatim, from whatever translation it was you were reading it from. It's like it's stuck in there. And I think that's really, really important. And it just reminded me, this angel is admonishing Joshua. That means that he's not telling Joshua something new. He's telling Joshua something he already should know. And it made me aware of the fact, and this is kind of an interesting thing, that Father doesn't actually have a whole lot to say, but what he does say, he says over and over and over. I mean, if you have read the Torah and then started reading the prophets, and I just did that with my kids in the last year. We read through the Torah, and then we read every single prophet. Every single one of those prophets is repeating the Torah over and over and over and over. You weren't listening. Let me tell you again. This is what was going to happen to you. Let me tell you again, over and over and over. Incidentally, this is why my teachings are so boring. It's because I'm telling you the same things over and over and over. But seriously, it reminds me of this passage, and then I'm going to pass it over to Evan. I don't know if it made you think of this passage, but it did me. Here's what Paul says in Philippians. Finally, my brethren, rejoice in the Master. To write the same things again is no trouble for me, and it is a safeguard for you. He actually says that in a couple of other places where he's like, in the book of Philippians, he says it several times. So I think it really pays it. It's unfortunate. Yeah, I'm going to throw this out there. I apologize, but here it is. 2 Timothy 4:3. The time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lusts they shall heap to themselves teachers, having itching ears, and they shall turn away their ears from the truth and shall be turned unto fables. You guys are familiar with this passage, right? That's like, I want to hear something cool. I want to hear something new. Do you know that word fable is that Greek word mysterion? It's really similar to that. It's actually muthos, which is based upon that Greek word mysterion. You know what that is? An initiate into the mysteries. That's Gnosticism, you guys. It's like a Gnostic wants to hear interesting and cool things. I don't want to hear the same old stuff. Why do you think the Israelites fell into idolatry and started worshiping other gods and started doing all kinds of stupid stuff? Because the same old instructions get boring after a while. But they're the road to life. You shouldn't get off that path. Evan, I apologize for waxing eloquent. I'm going to give it over to you for a second, and then I'm going to come over to Tracy Tim. Go, boy.
You seem to one point that I want to say is that you definitely repeat the repetition is not done just to the individual, but across the entire nation's lifespan. It's also repeated within the nation because the next generation has forgotten because they haven't been properly educated by the previous one. So
Well,
it
and
could be some part not directly the individual's fault.
yes, that's an awesome, awesome observation. You are correct, sir, because it's right there in Deuteronomy chapter 6, which says, you are instructed, you are commanded to instruct your children. Now, how many of us, I mean, we fail. We fail. We very much fail. And it's sad and it's unfortunate, but it's the truth. Tracy?
Looking at how else that word is used, that admonish word, it's also used in Deuteronomy when he says, I call heaven and earth to as witnesses against you today. So that word call.
Yep.
And if you look further into it, it's like testify, like it's a testimony. And this is kind of like a courtroom scenario here in Zechariah. So it's a testifying. And I looked at it in the Septuagint, and it says, and the angel of the Lord testified to Joshua, saying these things. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and looking at how like heaven and earth are these consistent, perpetual things that kind of goes along with being repetitive, I guess, in a way, because it's just something that's constantly there.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. And I saw that one in, in Moses talk, warning them, I call heaven and earth to testify against you. It's the same word. And that's, I don't know what else you can say about it. You just, man, you've got to pay attention to the simple. I mean, Peter told us, give ear to the pure milk of the word. Pure milk of the word is unadulterated. It's just straight word from God. It's not got a bunch of junk added into it, sweeteners and a little salt and pepper. It's more tasty when you add all that stuff, but it gets diluted and you're not getting the truth. Gracie,
In mine,
you got a microphone there for me?
in mine, the word that is put into English is protested.
Yeah,
That would very
protested.
much mean the same thing.
Yeah, protested seems such a weird choice, doesn't it?
Yeah, compared to what everything else we were saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are lots of different interpretations of that word in different English translations. And I definitely thought that I saw protested in a couple of my translations, and I thought that is just so weird. It doesn't seem to fit very well at all. Tracy?
Actually, it might, if you look at it, this is a courtroom setting, because Satan just stood up to oppose him. And I protest, I object. It's like that coming in. I think I can see that. This angel of the Lord saying, I protest. If he's gonna do this and this and this, then he can be in charge of this, So I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think I see what you're saying. I think that's not a bad idea. Sure. You got witness. Okay, so his text says witness. He witnessed to Joshua. Okay. So yours says testify. So that, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you're in the habit of doing this when you study, but I like to read a passage in multiple different translations. If you start seeing where this translation says one thing and another one says a different thing and another one says a different thing, that's a dead giveaway. That's like a big X that says dig here, because there's something important there. If the English translators are stumbling all over themselves trying to tell you what it means, that means you need to dig more deeply to get a little deeper. That'll really instruct you. Now I'm going to move forward into this section that is, if you will, then I will. Okay, and I think you guys know that many, almost all of the covenants that Father makes with his people are conditional covenants. And you guys know what conditional covenants are, right? It's got conditions. If you do this, then I will do that. Now, are there unconditional covenants in the Bible? Yes. One that you can think of? Give the microphone to Jerry. Let him tell us what it is.
The land that God gave to Abraham
Okay.
is
Well,
unconditional.
it was unconditional? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he said, if you do these things, I'll kick you out of there.
Yeah, but he didn't. I'm talking about for the long program. All the
Okay,
way
so
down
for the
road,
long haul.
Israel is
Ultimately,
going to get that land back.
I got you.
Replacement theology says no. I say yes.
Okay, yeah, I totally feel you. So yes, that isn't. It's weird because it seems conditional. I remember when we studied the book of Genesis, we were talking about Abraham being given that land grant, and it was, I don't remember what we called it, but it was actually like a tenant in lease, some kind of a legal term that we were looking at. It's like, it's still Father's land, but he's leasing it to the Israelites. He ultimately says, this is your inheritance, and you're going to get it. But it's almost like you give to your son or your daughter, I'm going to will this property to you, but you don't get it until you turn 30 years old, and only if you do this. But if you added conditions, then it wouldn't be unconditional anymore. It would be you get it, but not until you're 30. So something like that. So yes, he has willed this land to the children of Israel, but has said, in the meantime, until I fully give you your inheritance, if you do this, 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 and this, I'm kicking you out. You don't get to stay there. Which I would do the same thing to my kids if I had some basic, common decency rules in my house. It's like, hey, if you do these things, you're gonna have to hit the road. But seriously, I think there is another conditional covenant that I am thinking of. Can anyone remember what it is? It's Brett Wagner.
Yes, sir.
I'm so delighted to see you, sir. We were just praying for you before you came on, and I'm delighted to have you.
Yes, Genesis 9, the covenant of the rainbow and the cloud, and it shall be the sign of the covenant between me and the earth.
Yes, that's an excellent one. The sign of the covenant with the rainbow. That is an unconditional covenant. I'm thinking of yet another one. Anybody? Yes. Yes. Abraham and the covenant of the parts, where they cut the animals in half, and he said, and he went between the parts. God went through twice. Abraham, what's that? That is part of the land grant. That is absolutely correct. And immediately after that, you get these prophecies about the land and about these descendants who will go into slavery in Egypt for a time. Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. Was that you, Tracy? Were you going to say something? No, it was Jacqueline. Sorry, Jacqueline. What's up, sister?
Hi. Also, when he promises Jesus to Adam and Eve.
Can you clarify what you mean by that?
When he says that he will give the woman a son who is going, or a seed or whatever, that's going to stomp on the head of the
Stomp on the
snake.
serpent's head. Yes, yes. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So yes, it's really good to keep in mind. You know what? I'm going to bring something up here. Excellent observation, Jacqueline. You know that we've been talking briefly about conditional covenants. If you do this, I'll do that. And then unconditional covenants. I'm going to do this. That's a unilateral covenant. You ain't got to do nothing. I'm doing everything. Those are some amazing things, amazing promises from God. But often they're conditional. I was talking about this with my boys as we were driving the other day. Hayden, do you remember the question that I asked you and Evan regarding covenants? Somebody give him a microphone. Thank you, Gracie.
Conditional covenants as you can. You just asked us to describe. Well, you asked us to describe all the conditional covenants, and then you asked us, did they change, expand, or contract at the coming of Christ?
Yes, thank you for bringing that to my attention. The question was, thank you. Can you tell me explicitly what the promises are that you can totally count on from God. The second part of that question is, when Yeshua came, did he change those promises? Did he truncate them, make them smaller? Did he make them larger? Did he explain them better and they're just the same thing? Third is, who are those promises for? Just for Israelites? For anybody who wants to join them? Because the point here we were talking about was, if you don't know explicitly what God has promised you, how can you trust him for it? You can't. And I have had many conversations with people asking them, do you know what the promises of God are? You're like, well, I know that when I die, I'm going to heaven. Like, you may be surprised to find that that may not be true. If you die when Yeshua, if you get raptured when Yeshua shows up, you might never see heaven. He's going to rule on this planet. Remember we talked about that? You may not ever see heaven. You may just be resurrected and have an eternal body that is on this planet with Yeshua reigning in the 1,000 years, and then he turns over the kingdom to his Father with a new heaven and a new earth, right? You're earthbound. He intends for you to be on this planet. Now, you might, in the interim, if you die between now and then, get to see heaven, but some won't. So, but a lot of people think, well, I know that I've been promised that I'm going to go to heaven when I die. Okay. I know that I'll be resurrected. You know what? If you knew nothing else, that's a good thing to know. That's a good thing to know. But I think it makes sense for us to examine these conditional covenants and the unconditional ones and know very, very explicitly what was promised and what happened when Yeshua came. Because we know there's a new covenant. Did he get rid of some of those old ones? Did he add some new ones? That's a really important, I'm not going to answer that question for you. I would encourage you very much to look it up and find the answers. Who is that? I can't see you. Sorry, Cadence. I'm sorry that you're slightly under the weather, sister. I'm hoping you're feeling better soon.
Yes, I'm just over that hump and I'm heading down steeply, so I'm getting better.
Excellent. Well, what do you got for us?
I wanted to know if one of you guys off the top of your head have a reference of the surety of it before Christ would come back that we would go to heaven.
Ooh, that's a good question. Does anyone have correct me if I'm wrong, Cadence, does anyone know a passage, a scriptural reference to suggest that when you die, you go to heaven prior to Yeshua returning? Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Absent with the body, present with the Lord is one. Paul said, I strongly desire to depart this life and be with Yeshua. So is that definitive? Man, that's a hard one. Hayden and then Brett.
Many verses say when a character dies that he went to be with his fathers.
Or he was gathered to his ancestors or something like that. Yeah.
You could
what does
interpret
that mean?
A few different ways. But
yeah, you could interpret that a lot of different ways. Yes. Yeshua said, I go to prepare a place for you so that where I am, there you may be also. Absolutely. That can also be interpreted anytime along the timeline. So that's the problem with some of these statements is you don't know, are you going to be with the Lord? Yes. Some people think, and I know that this terrifies a lot of Christians, and I'm not saying it's true, but a lot of people think that when you die, you just go to sleep. And when you wake up, bam, Jesus is right there. You've just been resurrected. You wouldn't even, no time has passed for you. It's just like falling asleep and waking up. Now, some people believe that. I have no idea, and I would purport to tell you that anyone who tells you that they can definitively state that, you should really take what they're saying with a grain of salt. This is one of those weird gray areas of the scripture that is hidden from your sight. You know what this is? One of those tasty bits. things that you can, absolutely.
Spirit goes.
Yes, thank you.
If so, when I think it's Yeshua that brings that girl back to life.
Yeah.
And it says her spirit returned to her. Well, where did the spirit go if it returned to her?
That's a great question, and I think, here's something that people have said. I apologize, Brett. I'm coming to you, brother. When that Father breathed into the nostrils of the man after he created him from clay, and it says that he breathed the spirit into him, neshama, and man became a living what? Nefesh. He became a living soul. So a spirit and a soul are two different things. Presumably, if a person dies, I heard it explained to me one time where it was like, if you take a frog and dissect it and chop it all up and then put it back together, it ain't going to come back to life. It's got all of its parts. It's like, this is where Mary Shelley came up with the idea for Frankenstein. We got all of the parts. Let's just apply some, the spirit is just electricity. We need to apply some electricity and it'll come back to life. It doesn't work that way. There is a missing spark so that it will become a living soul again. That's the spirit that was breathed into the body. When the body dies, that spirit returns to God. Is that spirit part of your soul, your makeup, your personality, your thoughts, your feelings and emotions? I don't know. That's hard to define. Hold on to that thought. I'm going to come over to Brett. Brett, tell us the answer, please.
Then she reads John chapter 3, and it talks about how to set her mind at ease.
Wait, what is this verse?
1 John chapter 3.
1 John chapter 3.
Yeah, and when we say, and by this we know we are of the truth and shall set our hearts at rest before him. And that's kind of the punchline, the assurance of salvation when you love indeed and truth. So when you read that, that's the only way you can set your hearts at rest.
Brett, I got a question for you. Are you using Cox Internet? I'm making a joke because he works for Cox. I'm telling you. Yeah, Brett, you're totally, it's like one of those Verizon commercials. Like, can you hear me now? No, I can't hear you hardly at all, brother. I'm so sorry. And I'm sorry to you. I'm totally making a joke at Bryce's expense. Look at 1 John, and you might see what Brett was talking about. I couldn't quite hear. He's kind of freezing. And 1 John 3, yeah, take a look at that. I don't know what, you want to try again, Brett?
Yeah, it's 1 John chapter 3, and you can focus on the punchline of 18 and 19.
18 and 19? Something about a punchline?
Yeah, that's, you can set your heart at rest.
Okay, you can set your heart at rest is what he's telling you. If that works for you, delightful. I don't know what he's talking about, but I guess I can't hear him. Sorry, man. Fair enough. Now, I want to say that, those are difficult questions, and I love talking about difficult questions, but no one can really give you those answers, unfortunately. Yeah, Mundo. So who's got a microphone? Thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, Mundo, tell us what's up, brother.
So the scripture where Yeshua was talking about the bosom of Abraham, when he was giving the
parable about Lazarus and the poor man,
right?
Or Lazarus is the poor man, and the rich man is in the bosom of Abraham, kind of
and
thing.
He's
Sure.
Talking about, can I tell my family of what to expect, not to come here? And he said, well, if you didn't obey Torah, then they're not going to listen to me either.
Yes.
So if you have your soul is your mind, will, and emotions, your memory.
Yep.
So the fact that he was able to think of his family and trying to warn them.
Yeah, that's if you think that parable is anything but a parable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but if
you'd have to take that literally to where
taught it, then it's like,
Well, he was what was he teaching? That souls exist in some type of a Catholic purgatory situation?
No, it was the bosom of Abraham, and because remember when Yeshua rose, then he remember when he said when Mary saw him, she said, he said, "Don't touch me because I have not presented myself." He was the first fruit, and he came back down. So he brought those. Remember how the scripture? Sorry,
He's waving his microphone all over the place.
I'm going in and out.
Sorry, go ahead.
So the scripture talks about how people were seeing, they were coming out of the graves and they were seen by many.
Yes.
So that's when he rose, he took them up. That was the first fruit. Then he came down. Then he was able to be touched.
Yes.
So he could not be touched. So the resurrection that happened,
Yes.
people they were in the bosom of Abraham. That's what a lot of people believe.
I see. Yes. So I took it that like when he came back to life and Mary saw him, he's like, "Don't touch me because I have not yet ascended to my Father," as a first fruits offering. I think that's a totally reasonable explanation. But to say, where did he go? Did he go anywhere? We don't know.
You mean when he ascended?
No, between the time that he came back to life and went up in the cloud in the first part of Acts chapter 1. So he hung around. How many days did he hang around on the earth and people saw him and over 500 people witnessed him? Do you know how long that was? It was 40 days.
40 days, yeah.
Okay, so at what point did he go into purgatory? While he was dead? For the 3 days and 3 nights?
The keys from...
See, that's just it. I don't think anybody knows where he was spending time. And now people have often sorry, look at me casting judgment, have taken a strange interpretation from the book of 1 Peter that says he went and preached to the spirits now in prison. It's like, man, that is talking about Noah the spirit preaching through Noah in the days of Noah. That does not say. What do you mean? People have interpreted it like Yeshua went and made fun of the spirits now in prison. Ha! You can't come in. What? That doesn't make any sense. So anyway, I apologize, Jacqueline. Jacqueline, I apologize. It's your fault.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, I'll take it. I was going to say one of the ones that I would hear that probably people would use to say that people go to heaven is Jesus on the cross with the thief. "Today you will be with me in paradise."
Absolutely.
Although who knows where paradise is and who knows how long today is.
Well, and here's a point that really people need to pay attention to is that, and I think you all know this already, there's no punctuation in Greek. "Truly I say to you today, you will be with me in paradise." Or, "Truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." It all is dependent upon a comma, which does not exist in Greek. So, he was probably comforting a dying man. Now, guys, don't hear me telling you that you're not going to heaven when you die. If you have your heart set on going to heaven when you die, I hope you do. I hope I do. I think that'd be awesome. Would I be okay if I just fell asleep and when I woke up, I was in the presence of Yeshua? Because he had just resurrected everybody? Yeah, that'd be awesome. Either way is fine with me. Now, one thing that gives me pause and it makes me question some things, which is very interesting, is in the book of Revelation. Again, this is one of those mysterious passages where there's the souls of those who were killed under the altar. Where did those people come from? I have no clue. No clue. So maybe Keith knows. Yeah, they were martyred. So where did they come from? Tell us, Keith. What's up, buddy?
So in Acts 2:29, "Men and brothers, let me speak boldly to you of our ancestor David, that he died and was buried, and his tomb is with us to this day. Being a prophet then, and knowing that Elohim had sworn with an oath to him of the fruit of his loins, according to the flesh, to raise up the Messiah to sit on his throne. Foreseeing that he spoke concerning the resurrection of Messiah, and that his being was neither left in Sheol, nor did his flesh see corruption. Elohim has raised up this Yeshua, of which we are all witnesses. And then it says, therefore, having been exalted to the right hand of Elohim, having received from the Father the promise of the set apart Spirit, he poured out of this which you now see and hear. For
So
David did not ascend into the heavens, but he himself said, Yahovah said to my master, sit at my right hand.
So I assume by that you are saying that he was speaking specifically of Yeshua, who would see no decay and death and corruption.
He
Not
is the
talking about
one.
David.
He is the one.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's a reasonable expectation. But then again, think about it, contemplate it. But frankly, it doesn't make any difference. I think it'd
No,
be
because
neat.
when
I think
you
it'd be
die,
neat
the
to
next
see
thing you're
heaven.
going to realize when you wake up is, hey, I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm resurrected.
absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, would it be interesting to see the heavenly realm where Father dwells with his emissaries and such? Yeah, that'd be sweet, and I may get to see it sometime. Frankly, when you grow up, you have these ideas about playing harps on clouds and such. It's like, I'm going to spend eternity in heaven. It's like, I don't know if that sounds like a good time. But then I started reading a little bit more carefully and I'm like, wait a minute. Seems like we're going to be spending a heck of a lot more time on this planet. And there's going to be people who need to be in charge of things, and he's going to be administrating a kingdom and ruling this planet for 1,000 years. And then there's a whole nother planet after that that's like brand new, and it just goes on into eternity, and you don't have any idea what's happening there. It's like, now that sounds a little more interesting to me. I would like to see heaven. It's like I'd like to visit Paris. I don't know that I'd want to live there. Anyway, so I just want to point out to you that you should take a few minutes this weekend, if you have an opportunity, and look at this conditional covenant that is talked about here with Joshua the high priest and this angel of Yah. What specifically, and I'm just going to run through these really quickly for you. I'm not going to dig deeply because I want to turn this over to my guest who's going to share for a few minutes. Here's just, I kind of broke this down for you. It says, if Joshua, and why did I put Joshua, Yeshua, and we? Well, because Joshua is the high priest in the time of the prophet that we're reading. It's very clearly a prophetic shadow picture of Yeshua the Messiah. And if he is our ultimate high priest and you are a kingdom of priests, which is what this said, you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, and a holy nation, do you guys believe that you are going to be priests and administrators of a kingdom? Only if you're worthy of doing it, I hope. So do these things apply to us as well as Joshua, as well as to Yeshua? This is something that kind of gave me pause and made me want to dig a little deeper into this, which is, if this is a prophetic shadow picture of Yeshua, then that means that Yeshua needs to walk in his ways and keep his charge, and then Yeshua will get judgment of his house, the keeping of his courts, and places to walk among those who stand by, whatever that means. And if you look at those words and you dig deep into the Hebrew mention, the first time that word is mentioned in the Hebrew text, fascinating things. I don't have time to go into that. I may back up next time we get together and just run through a couple of things for you. But think about that. If Joshua, Yeshua, and you will walk, halak, where we get the Jewish halakha, how do you keep the commandments? If you will walk in his ways, derek, keep, shamar, guard, his charge, mishmareth, then he will give you judgment, the beit din, the judgment of the house, and keeping, shamar, again, guarding his courts, chatzer, and places to walk, again, that word halak, among those who stand by, amad. Just write a note to yourself to look at walk, halak, where does that first appear in the Torah, and amad, stand by. Where does that first appear in the Torah? Fascinating insights, and they're both related to Abraham, not surprisingly. So I'm going to pause right there because I want to turn this over to Mike.
All right. So, I'm not strong on the prophecy side of things. but I did ponder these verses 8 through 10, 8 verse 8 through 10 quite a bit, and put together some ideas just from the imagery. And I think if we can kind of keep the messianic view we've been looking at since chapter 1, some of these things will start to pop out here. All right. So I'm going to read 8 and 9 again here. It says, "Hear now, O Joshua the high priest, you and your fellows who sit before you, for they are men of symbol. For behold, I will bring forth my servant the branch. For behold, the stone that I have set before Joshua, on one stone are 7 eyes. Behold, I will engrave its engraving, says Yahuwah of hosts, and I will remove the iniquity of the land in one day." And as I go through the slides, I'm going to just keep that anchor point at the top that we can refer back to. So Joshua the high priest and his fellows or friends are told to hear, or shema, to hear, listen, and obey. And my first question are, who are these friends? Who are these fellows? And the word fellows is reah in Hebrew and means friend, brother, or companion. But when you look at the Paleo Hebrew, there's also a reference to shepherd or pasture, and it says to protect a flock, which is essentially what these pastors or priests would do, right? So Joshua or Yehoshua, this high priest, I'm wondering if these fellows are maybe part of this priesthood. So that's the idea I'm going with here. And, Alan, you just shared 1 Peter 2:9, but you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for possession, so that you might speak of the praises of him who have called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. So I'm just going to go with this idea that these fellows that are with the high priests are his companions, are also priests. And I also know when you're kind of looking at 8 and 9, because I read this in a bunch of different translations, that servant branch could be in verse 8. Sometimes it's in verse 9. And it says he'll bring forth his servant branch. And I've got this cross reference here for Isaiah 11:1 through 2. "And a shoot goes out from the stump of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. And the spirit of Yahuwah shall rest on him, the spirit of wisdom and understanding, the spirit of counsel and might, the spirit of knowledge and the fear of Yahuwah." So there's 7 spirits here, and we need to keep this in mind in reference to the shoot. So this is out of Jesse, King David, a picture of the Messiah is born. And our Messiah is referenced in Isaiah 53, verse 2, "For he comes up before him as a tender plant and as a root out of a dry ground. He has no form nor majesty that we should see him, nor an appearance that we should desire him." And Jeremiah 23:5, "Behold, the days come, says Yahuwah, that I will raise to David a righteous branch, and a king shall reign and act wisely, and shall do judgment and justice in the earth." And Zechariah 6, verse 12, "And speak to him, saying, So speaks Yahuwah of hosts, saying, Behold, the man whose name is the branch, and he shall spring up out of his place, and he shall build the temple of Yahuwah." So this branch is building the temple. And then continuing in verse 9, we see a stone set before Joshua. What is the stone? The stone is a picture of the Father and the Son. And we've talked about this in the group before, but just quickly, the word stone in Hebrew is Evan. So the first two letters, Av, spells father. The last two letters, Ben, spells son. And together, Echad, they're one stone. So let's look at a couple of scriptures about the stone. Psalm 118:22. The stone which the builders refused has become the head of the corner. And Isaiah 28:16. Therefore, so says the Lord Yahovah, behold, I place in Zion a stone for a foundation, a tried stone, a precious cornerstone, a sure foundation. He who believes shall not hurry. Romans 9 verse 33, as it is written, behold, I lay in Zion a stumbling stone, a rock of offense, and everyone believing on him shall not be put to shame. And perhaps because their iniquity will be removed, as we see in Zechariah 3 verse 9. 1 Peter 2, 4 through 8. For having been drawn to him, a living stone, indeed rejected by men, but elect precious with God, you also, as living stones, are built up a spiritual house, a holy priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices accepted to God through Yeshua HaMashiach. Therefore, also it is contained in the scripture, behold, I lay in Zion a chief cornerstone, elect, precious, and he who believes on him shall never be ashamed. Therefore, to you who believe is the honor, but to those who are disobedient, he is the stone which the builders rejected. This one came to be the head of the corner, and a stone of stumbling, and a rock of offense to those disobeying, who stumble at the word which they were also appointed. So in verse 9, it says, on one stone are 7 eyes, behold. And I was talking to Ella about this, and when we first started reading this verse, she said it sounds like a stone with a bunch of googly eyes on it. And I think that's probably how I read this verse for many years. But as I started looking at it a little closer, rather than a stone with 7 eyes on it, could this be 7 eyes are beholding the stone? And then you think, well, which one of these priests is maybe missing an eye, because 7's an odd number. So I think we're going to have to tie a few more things together. It says here in Zechariah 4. Let's see. I think I lost my place here. And I'm going to try not to run over, Alan, what you might have planned for chapter 4, but I'll just reference a couple of points. The vision in Zechariah 4 talks about a lampstand and a menorah, and it's 7 lamps and 2 olive trees. And when asked what this is, the word of Yahovah says, not by might nor power, but by my spirit. And I think what's being seen there is in that vision is a functional picture of the spirit. And I'm sure we'll go deeper into that in chapter.
Don't worry about me at all, man.
Okay.
We'll cover it. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So when he asked the messenger about the vision in chapter 4, verse 9 says, the hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation of this house. So it's important that we remember that piece. His hand shall also finish it, and you shall know that Yahovah of hosts has sent me to you. For who has despised the day of small things? For they shall rejoice and shall see the plummet in the hand of Zerubbabel. These 7 are the eyes of Yahovah, which run to and fro through the whole earth. And I answered and said to him, what are these 2 olive trees on the right and the left, on the right of the lampstand and on its left? So there's a couple of things here. The foundation of the house is laid. And remember, we just read it in Isaiah 28, says the cornerstone is laid as the foundation. And then the 7 lamps are the 7 eyes of Yahovah, which run to and fro. And you may say, how do we know these 7 that is being referred to in this verse is referring to the lamps? Well, it's because the question goes on to ask about the olive trees that are described in correlation to the lampstands at the beginning of chapter 4. So we're making a clear connection here that these eyes are connected to the lamp. And then in 2 Chronicles 16:9, for the eyes of Yahovah run to and fro in all the whole earth to show himself strong on behalf of those whose heart is perfect towards him. You have done foolishly in this, therefore from now on you shall have wars. And we see the eyes of Yahovah run to and fro to see whose heart is perfect towards him. Then in Revelation 1:4, John to the 7 churches which are in Asia, grace to you and peace from him who is and who was and who is coming, and from the 7 spirits which are before his throne. Revelation 1:20, the mystery of the 7 stars which you saw in my right hand and the 7 golden lampstands. The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, and the 7 lampstands which you saw are the 7 churches. So we learned in Zechariah, the 7 lamps are the 7 eyes of Yahovah. Here in Revelation, the 7 lamps are the 7 churches. In Revelation 4:5, it says, and out of the throne came lightnings and thunderings and voices, and 7 lamps of fire were burning in front of the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. So here we see that the 7 burning lamps are the 7 spirits of Yahovah. Revelation 5:6, and I looked, and lo, in the midst of the throne and the 4 living creatures, amidst the elder, a lamb stood as if it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent forth in all the earth. So here we see 7 horns, 7 eyes, and they are the 7 spirits of Yahovah sent to and fro on the earth. So a quick summary of these things, because it's difficult to see these all in separate verses. Zechariah 3 contains 7 eyes that may be looking at one stone, possibly the cornerstone or foundation stone spoken of as the foundation in Zechariah 4:9. Then Zechariah 4 says the 7 lamps are the 7 eyes which run to and fro on the earth. Revelation 1 says there are 7 spirits before the throne, and the 7 lamps are the 7 churches. Revelation 4 says the 7 burning lamps are the 7 spirits. And Revelation 5 says the 7 horns and 7 eyes are 7 spirits that are sent forth into all the earth to and fro. So there's some significant parallels that we're seeing here. Essentially, when you take these pieces, the 7 burning lamps equal 7 eyes, 7 churches, and 7 spirits, and the 7 eyes equal 7 spirits that are sent forth into all the earth to and fro. So in Zechariah 3, we see Yehoshua the high priest standing with his fellows, maybe priests, and the stone that is laid in front of them, there are 7 eyes beholding this foundation stone. So what I'm wondering, what I'm hypothesizing is, could these 7 eyes on this stone represent 7 spirit-filled priests that are essentially the church and its function through the Spirit to go to and fro on the earth to find those with a heart that is perfect towards Yahovah for the purpose of building his true house made up of living stones, a royal priesthood that sits on top of the foundational cornerstone. So I'm getting ready to show you kind of a collage I put together as I was picturing what this actually looked like in my mind. So
It's an abomination.
it's a little silly, but this is a picture that is in summary of this slide, right? So the seven spirits, if these eyes are tied to the lampstand, and the seven spirits we see, the seven spirits from Isaiah 11, the spirit of Yahovah, wisdom, understanding, counsel, might, knowledge, and fear of Yahovah. And then we've got the stone, the cornerstone from Isaiah, the stone of stumbling from Isaiah 8, the stone the builders rejected in Psalm 118. And then we're all living stones building a spiritual house in 1 Peter. And remember, Zerubbabel has laid the foundation of this house. And the branch will build the temple of Yahovah as mentioned in Zechariah 6. Then we've got the servant branch and his priests. Yehoshua, the high priest, and his fellows judging the house and keeping his courts as seen in Zechariah 3. A royal priesthood, a holy nation from 1 Peter. Revelation 1:13. And having turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands. And in the midst of the 7 lampstands, I saw one like the Son of Man. And then we have the eyes and the spirits. So 7 eyes are on one stone in Zechariah 3:9. 7 spirits before the throne of Yahovah in Revelation 1:4. 7 lamps of fire are the 7 spirits. 7 lamps are the 7 eyes of Yahovah in Zechariah. 7 lamps are the 7 churches in Revelation 1. 7 eyes are the 7 spirits sent forth in the earth in Revelation 5. And the eyes of Yahovah are sent forth on the earth to show himself strong for those with a heart perfect towards him in 2 Chronicles. Matthew 24:14, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations. Then shall the end come. Any questions or thoughts on any of this before I move to the next one?
Yeah, no, that's delightful. Tracy, Tim has a question. Mike?
Hi, Mike, Tim.
Hello, Tracy, Tim.
So as you were reading this, a couple things popped in my head. One thing was Zechariah 12, which we'll get to eventually. Verse 10, I believe it is. And it talks about how Yahovah is going to pour out the spirit of grace. And it says, and they shall look on me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourns for his only son. And that kind of made me think about looking at the stone, they shall look upon me. I don't know if there's any connection there, but I thought that might be a neat thing. And also I'm seeing a double thing, like a parallel where it's like the stone with the 7 eyes, and the 7 eyes are the 7 spirits. Well, we know that Yahovah placed his spirit upon Messiah. My spirit shall rest upon him, just like we read. And so he is the stone with the 7 spirits on him. But then when we look upon him, we are of that same spirit. So I don't know. I'm not sure if that's making sense at all, but and then when we receive that spirit, we go out to and fro, searching as his servants to find people who will serve him, to preach the gospel to. And one thing I'd mentioned when we were talking about this before, that I'll just mention to the group, is that Satan also goes out to and fro. That's something like we hear in Job. I'm out to and fro, and what's he looking for? And he's looking for the same thing, because Yahweh said, well, have you considered my servant Job? There's no one like him. He's upright. He's a good guy. Except Satan's out there seeking to destroy those people, where God's spirit is seeking to redeem. So I don't know. There's some really neat parallels there, I think.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Tracy. Anybody in-house have a question for Mike? Okay. Take it away, Mike. Keep going, buddy.
All right. All right. I wanted to kind of talk about the word behold. So you see this, you may see this keyed to Strong's H2009 or H2005. And it'll look like this Hebrew word here with the hey, the noon, and the hey. And H2009 is often translated as see, lo, or behold. This is the word we see at the top of the sentence where it says for behold at the beginning there. And it's pronounced hine. However, the behold after the 7 eyes is H2005. And when you look it up, it'll be spelled the same, but in the scripture itself, if you look at the interlinear or other Hebrew text, has this word spelled like this with the hey, noon, yod. So this guy right here. And this one is pronounced hineni. And when you see it pronounced this way, it means here I am or here am I. And it may bring some scriptures to mind like Genesis 22:1. And it came to be after these events that Elohim tried Abraham and said to him, Abraham, and he said, here I am. Genesis 31:11, and the messenger of Elohim spoke to me in a dream saying, Yaakov, and I said, here I am. And Exodus 3:4, and Yahweh saw that he turned aside to see, and Elohim called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moshe, Moshe, and he said, here I am. So remember that the sentence structure we're looking at in Zechariah has English punctuate. It has the English punctuation, but in Hebrew it doesn't. So could the behold be part of maybe the previous sentence? You know, on one stone are 7 eyes, here I am. Perhaps he is the stone which the 7 eyes or spirits are gazing upon, and he's saying, here I am. And then I wanted to kind of tackle the 2 words here. I will engrave its engraving. And I think, Alan, when you read this, it said something a little bit different, like engraving the inscription or something.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So they're similar, right? So the H6005, this first word engraving, it's most commonly translated as open. And it's this these letters Pei, Tav, and Het, and it's pronounced Patak. And we see this in Brown Driver Briggs, the open, to be let loose, to throw open, to free, to loose oneself. However, in the word in the text, when you look at it in the Hebrew, it's actually spelled like this. And it's, even though it's keyed to 6605, it's spelled with a mem pe tav het, which is like maftek or maftik, which means key, opening, or instrument. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And even the word picture that we look at here, this is the Hebrew, the Paleo Hebrew picture. And the mem is like waters. The pei is to speak a word, to open. The tav is a covenant or seal. And the het is private or separate, fence, inner room. And with this meaning a key, I'm wondering if this is the key, the water of the spoken word that opens the covenant to those that are separated, right? There's something specific happening with this engraving. And I looked this word up in a couple other places, and was wondering if Isaiah 22 is this key, the cross that was put on Yeshua's shoulder. So Isaiah 22:22, and the key of the house of David I will lay on his shoulders, so he shall open, and none shall shut, and he shall shut, and none shall open. Then in Chronicles, we see the Levites were the key to opening the house of God. First Chronicles 9:26 and 27, for they were in faithfulness, the four chief gatekeepers, they were Levites and were over the rooms and over the treasuries of the house of God. And they lived around the house of God because the duty was on them. And they were to open morning by morning. And then continuing on here, we see the second word here, engraving, pituach. It's H6603. And it's similar to the first word engrave. There's an interesting connection here to the shoulder, stones, priests, and the word pituach. The first mention of this word is Exodus 28. And 28:11 through 12 says, with the work of an engraver in stone, like the engravings of a signet, you shall engrave the two stones with the names of the sons of Israel. You shall make them to be set in settings of gold, and you shall put the two stones upon the shoulders of the ephod for the stones of memorial to the sons of Israel. And Aaron shall bear their names before Yahovah upon his two shoulders for a memorial. Now in Zechariah 3 verse 9, the word has, again, a slightly different spelling. And we see the word spelled with a pei, a tav, a het, and a hey. And we first see this spelling in Proverbs 31 when describing the woman of virtue. And this word is translated as open. Proverbs 31:25 and 26 says, strength and honor are her clothing, and she shall rejoice in time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the Torah of kindness. So in Zechariah 3, we see a foundation stone laid before them, the stone that represents the Father and the Son. Could this engraved engraving be the key that opens the covenant that will remove the iniquity of the land in one day? And verse 9 says, for behold, I will bring forth the servant branch, and for behold, the stone that I have set before Joshua, on one stone are 7 eyes. Behold, I will engrave its engraving, says Yahovah of hosts, and I will remove the iniquity of the land in one day. The iniquity of the land will be removed in one day. And I was thinking about Jeremiah 33:15. In those days and at that time, I will cause the branch of righteousness to grow up to David, and he shall do judgment and righteousness in the land. Hebrews 7:26 and 27, who does not need, as those high priests, to offer up sacrifices daily, first for his own sins and then for the people's sin, for he did this once for all when he offered up himself. And Hebrews 9:11 through 12, but when Christ had become a high priest of good things to come by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, not of this building nor by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood, he entered once for all into the holies, and having obtained eternal redemption for us. 1 John 3:5, and you know that he was revealed that he might take away our sins, and in him is no sin. Matthew 1:21, and he shall bear a son, and you shall call his name Yehoshua, for he shall save his people from their sins. In that day, says Yahovah of hosts, you shall call each man to his neighbor to sit under the vine and under the fig tree. That call each man to his neighbor, it reminded me of part of the reference in the New Covenant. in which the sins are forgiven, and we shall no longer need to teach our neighbors, but will live in harmony with them. Jeremiah 31:34. And they shall no more teach each man his neighbor, and each man his brother, saying, Know Yahovah, for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, says Yahovah. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sins no more. And just this last piece under the vine and fig tree, this peace and safety. 1 Kings 4:25. And Judah and Israel lived safely, every man under his vine, under his fig tree, from Dan even to Beersheba, all the days of Solomon. Micah 4:4. But they shall sit each one under his vine, under his fig tree, and there shall be no trembling, for the mouth of Yahovah of hosts has spoken. And that is what I've got.
Mike, that was fantastic, brother.